Now when Jesus came into the district of Caesarea Philippi, he began asking his disciples, saying, "Who do people say that the Son of Man is?" That question that Jesus asked of his disciples is found in this reading from Matthew chapter 16, verse 13. You'll find it in three of the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, but I've read there from Matthew's record of that. Who do people say that the Son of Man is? Do you know that the most frequent expression that Jesus used to refer to himself was as the Son of Man? And in fact, some 81 times over the four Gospels. About 30 times in Matthew, about 25 times in the Gospel of Luke, and about half of that in Mark and in John, about 14 or 15 times each in those Gospels. And so more than occasionally Jesus talked about himself being the Son of God. He would refer to himself in other ways, like some of the I am statements in the Gospel of John. But more than any other way, he referred to himself as the Son of Man. If he were speaking in Hebrew, that phrase is found a number of times in the Old Testament. It would be the son of Adam, the son of Adam. And so, but nobody else ever referred to him that way. You find the disciples calling him Lord. You find a few cases where somebody confessed their faith in him as Son of God. They might call him, his disciples might call him Master or Teacher. But nobody else ever referred to him as the Son of Man in the Gospels. There is a reference when Stephen is dying in Acts chapter 7 where he talks about Jesus as the Son of Man. We might make some reference to that a little bit later on in the lesson. But Jesus often, or more than any other way, referred to himself as the Son of Man. I just want you to appreciate that there is such humility in that expression. The Son of Man. I mean, it's what's special about that? It's basically just saying I'm a human being. The human being. The Son of Man, the son of Adam. How many sons does Adam have? I mean, everyone that's a human being is a son of Adam. And so it is such a generic, such a humble kind of expression for him to use. But when Jesus uses that statement, he is always saying something about his identity or his mission. It's couched in some kind of context in which he's revealing something about who he is or why he's come. And I want to suggest to you tonight that it is a strategically ambiguous way of referring to himself. If Jesus came talking when he was on the earth, making boldly and confidently and openly the claim that he were the Son of God, how quickly would he have been opposed? And so there is care that he takes about giving time for people to witness his works and to hear his messages and to see his character. And so he is using Son of Man as a title, and we'll see that there is great meaning to that title. There's some Old Testament background from which that are the roots for him referring to himself that way. But there's nothing provocative in him talking about himself as the Son of Man. And so as he makes these statements about himself, it was, as I said, strategically ambiguous because it allows him to begin to say things to people after a miracle or after he had taught something or after he had revealed something. He can say something about himself that they can over time process. And so it gave time for people to do what he wanted them to do, and that is to reflect in their hearts, like who could this be? Like, who can say these things? Who speaks with this kind of wisdom? Who can do these deeds? And evaluate and come to faith, a real faith, because it was a faith that was based on their own ciphering about who Jesus is and why it is that he's come. So I want to take just a few, we're not going to look at all 81 instances where Jesus talked about himself as the Son of Man, but I do want to make a quick survey of some representative statements that Jesus made in Matthew's gospel. And I like staying just in one, just to kind of see how he says some things about himself, and just to give you some for instances of the way that he used that. So the first is found in Matthew chapter 8. Matthew chapter 8. I would really urge you to kind of follow along as we look at these texts. So Matthew chapter 8, and in verse 20, where somebody said to Jesus, I want to come follow you. And Jesus said to him in Matthew 8 and verse 20, the foxes have holes and the birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. Do you see that he's saying something there about that he is pretty ordinary? He is pretty humble in he's got no property to speak of. There's nothing that would draw people to him from power or position or wealth. And so he's really challenging the man to think about, why would you want to follow the Son of Man? This person I'm a nobody as far as the world is concerned. So he's challenging him to think about, why would you really want to follow the Son of Man? Because I've got nowhere to lay my head. In chapter 11, in verse 19, he makes another statement that just is showing the way that he identifies with the most common of humanity. And so Jesus is saying about himself, there had been some people talking about John the Baptist, and so Jesus says about that generation how they were so fickle, both in their assessment of John and in their assessment of him. He says in verse 18 of Matthew 11, John came neither eating nor drinking. They say he has a demon. The Son of Man came eating and drinking. The Son of Man, talking about himself. And they say, behold, a gluttonous man and a drunkard, a friend of tax gatherers and sinners, yet wisdom is vindicated by her deeds. And so he's saying that the Son of Man, he's saying something about himself, his character. He's got nowhere to lay his head. And here is somebody who befriends people that are sinners, people that have messed up, people who are tax collectors, people that those who are religious gossip about. He's come to be friends to those kinds of people. And as a result, he's inherited some criticism for that. Now, in contrast to those kind of statements that are so humble in disclosing who the Son of Man is, we find these other statements that are pretty challenging. So look at Matthew chapter 9 and verse 6, where Jesus heals a man who's paralyzed. He's the one that was lowered by his four friends through the roof, and the man was expecting that Jesus was going to raise him up to walk again, and instead Jesus forgives the man's sins, and he recognizes that the scribes and the Pharisees who are sitting in the amen pew in the house, they are reasoning in their heart, like, who does he think he is? Which is exactly what he wants people to be thinking. Who does this man think he is? Who is this? And so he gives another one of these self-disclosures about the Son of Man. He says, in order that you may know, this is Matthew 9 verse 6, in order that you may know that the Son of Man has authority on earth to forgive sins. Then he said to the paralytic, rise up, take up your bed and go home. And so, who is this Son of Man? Humble man, has no place to lay his head. He's a friend of tax collectors and sinners. And yet, here he is, he's just made this man well. Who can do that? And what man can forgive sins? What son of Adam has authority to forgive sins? So it really challenges the people to think about, who is this Son of Man? Who does these kinds of things? Who has this kind of authority? Matthew chapter 12 and verse 8. Matthew chapter 12 and verse 8. After being criticized for his disciples picking some heads of grain on the Sabbath day, which they were doing because they were so busy teaching and ministering to people that they didn't have time to stop to eat, he gets criticized for breaking the Sabbath because they were, as if picking heads of grain while they were walking to their whatever they were going to do next represented some kind of harvesting. They get criticized. But Jesus makes this statement in Matthew chapter 12 and verse 8, "For the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath." He's making a claim there that the Son of Man is going to be the one who is going to bring man the rest that God intended. Here's one who's going to fulfill the purpose of the Sabbath. He's Lord of the Sabbath. He's the one that's going to bring its real purpose to fruition. And so that's a pretty bold claim, but how do you reconcile that with all these humble statements about who the Son of Man is? In Matthew 16, in verse 27, Jesus says about himself, in that great context where he talks about what will it profit a man if he gain the whole world and lose his own soul. He says in verse 27 in Matthew 16, "For the Son of Man is going to come in the glory of his Father with his angels, and will then recompense every man according to his deeds." So here he's making a statement that the Son of Man is going to be appointed by God as a judge. He's going to come with the glory of his Father. So he's the son of Adam, but he has a relationship with God. He's going to come in the glory of his Father with the Father's angels. He's going to come and he's going to be the commander of an army of angels that are going to follow him. And that he's going to render judgment on all the earth according to men's deeds. And so here are some really bold claims to reconcile with these humble statements that are made against him or about him. But here's where it gets even more challenging. I understand not for us because we're reading back into these stories, but if you were following him then and hearing these things for the first time, trying to figure out who is he and what's he trying to say to us about himself? Look at Matthew 17 and verse 21, really verse 22. After the event of the Transfiguration, where he showed his glory to the three disciples, Peter, James, and John, it says, "While they were gathering together in Galilee, Jesus said to them, 'The Son of Man is going to be delivered into the hands of men.'" So the Son of Man, the son of Adam, is going to be delivered into the other, sons of Adam, into the hands of other men, and they will kill him, and he will be raised on the third day, and they were deeply grieved. So how does that happen? I mean, how is it possible that he, a chapter earlier, was talking about himself coming, leading an army of angels in judgment, yet now here, he's talking about the same person who is going to be delivered into the hands of men. He leads an army of angels, but men are going to take him. And he's going to be delivered into their hands and killed, and then rise on the third day. In chapter 20 and verse 28, he says about himself, when he's talking about the need for humility, and he's really shaming his disciples because they are so competitive. They're so worried about which one of them is going to be greatest in the kingdom. He rebukes them for that. He says, "Whoever wishes to be first among you shall be your slave." Matthew 20, verse 27. "Just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life a ransom for many." And so he speaks of the fact that his life is going to be given as a price for many. And just appreciate what that adds to the idea of Son of Man. Jesus doesn't talk about himself as being son of David. Doesn't talk about himself as being the son of Abraham. Doesn't talk about being a son of Israel. He is kin to everybody. He's a son of Adam, not a Jewish son. He speaks of his kinship to all humanity when he talks about son of Adam. And so there's purpose in that genericness of how he describes himself, because he has come to do what God promised he would do through Abraham's son, and that's to bless all nations or all peoples. And so the Son of Man or Son of Adam has come to not to be served, but to give his life a ransom for many, for all the sons of Adam. In Matthew chapter 26, in verse 64, Matthew chapter 26, in verse 64, this is one of the boldest statements that Jesus makes, and it's the reason that the Sanhedrin finally finds words from his own mouth that become the basis for turning him over to Pilate to be crucified. They adjure him, the high priest does, in Matthew 26 and verse 63, to tell whether or not he's the Son of God. And Jesus doesn't answer him directly, but instead he alludes to a prophecy that's found in Daniel chapter 7, when he says, "You have said it yourself, nevertheless I tell you, hereafter you shall see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of power and coming on the clouds of heaven." And when he said that, the high priest tore his garments and said, we don't need anyone else. We don't need any other witnesses. He's just spoken blasphemy, because he's talked about himself as being equal with God when he talks about the Son of Man being sitting at the right hand of power and coming on the clouds of heaven. I alluded earlier to the fact that Stephen is the lone person who, outside of the Gospels, talks about Jesus as the Son of Man, and he too alluded to this passage, but he didn't talk about seeing the Son of Man sitting by the power of God. You know what he talked about seeing? He saw the Son of Man standing. It was when he was being stoned, and he saw Jesus, he said, but he talks about him as the Son of Man standing at the right hand of God, and acknowledging him when he gave his life for his Lord. And so this is the boldest claim that Jesus makes, and the high priest and the Sanhedrin get the claim that he's making here about being kin to God, not just man, when he talks about him coming on, sitting at the right hand of power and coming with the clouds in that great passage. So that brings us back to Matthew chapter 16, and it's the reason I started there. When Jesus asked his disciples the question in verse 13 of Matthew 16, he says, "Who do people say the Son of Man is?" Do you see that all of those different statements, every time Jesus gives them a little piece where he tells them something about who he is, he's challenging them to process that and to ask in their question, who is this Son of Man? Who is this? And to look at his deeds and to hear his words and to come to faith, because they recognize that the evidence is overwhelming. This is not this is not just another son of Adam. This is not just another human being. This man is special. He's different. He's different in the way he cares. He's different in the way he loves. He's different in the way he ministers. He's different in his selflessness. He's different in his integrity. He's different in his credibility. He's different in the way that he gives of himself. He's different in the way that he speaks. He commands us and convicts us about wanting to be different. He hangs out with sinners, but sinners don't feel good about their sin when they hang out with him. They want to change and be different. And so, who is this Son of Man? Would be the question that he wanted them to ask, and I think they were compelled to ask as they were around him. So I said to you that there's some Old Testament roots for this expression, and I want to look at 3 texts from the Old Testament that I think help us to understand a little bit more about why Jesus used this expression about himself. I think just on the surface, like if we knew nothing about what the Old Testament says, we can appreciate just the fact that Jesus is using this very generic expression to challenge people to think about who he is, like to fill in the blanks. He's using this very humble way of describing himself. And so they're compelled to think about, okay, he's not an ordinary man, but who is he? But there is more to that. There is a claim in what Jesus is saying. More than any other place in the Old Testament, there is one prophet who is referred to over and over and over again, almost to the point of redundancy, as the Son of Man. And it's the prophet Ezekiel. I want you to look in your Old Testament at Ezekiel chapter 37. We could go all the way back to chapter 2, and there are 90 times just in the book of Ezekiel that expression, Son of Man, is used. I don't know that it gets used by any other. Isn't it funny how I can't talk and turn in my Bible at the same time. Let me stop and, okay, Ezekiel 37, I'm here. Ezekiel 37 is the passage where God takes Ezekiel and shows him a valley that's full of dried bones. It's full of skeletons. And in verse 3 of that passage, he, after showing him, the Spirit takes him there, shows him the valley of dry bones, and he said to me, Son of man, can these bones live? And I answered, and Ezekiel does this a lot in the book. He doesn't want to get in trouble, saying something dumb. So he says, oh Lord, you know. He doesn't want to say, he doesn't want to give an answer, yes or no. He's going to leave it up to God to show him whether the bones can live again. And of course, they do. He's told to prophesy over the bones, and those bones come to life. And so over and over again, that's the way. God never calls Ezekiel Ezekiel. He always calls him Son of Man, Son of Adam. But I want us to appreciate who Ezekiel is. Ezekiel is he is one of the prophets that prophesied while the Israelites were in captivity. You had Daniel, who was one of the first that was carried away into captivity. And then you had Ezekiel, who was carried away in the second wave of persons that were taken into captivity. Now, when Ezekiel went into captivity, Jerusalem was still standing. There would be a third invasion of Nebuchadnezzar against the city of Jerusalem, where Jerusalem would be destroyed, where the temple would be destroyed, and everyone would go into captivity. But Ezekiel and the peoples that were taken with him into captivity, he was a priest, and he was camping with the other captives. Everybody thought they were going to go back to Jerusalem. Nobody thought we're going to stay here. They all thought we're going to go back. And it was Ezekiel's fun job to go and speak to these people who thought they were going back to Jerusalem and say, you ain't going back. Build houses, get ready, we're going to be here for 70 years. You're going to die here. Your kids might go back, but you ain't going back. And so that was his mission. God talked about, when he first talked to the Son of Man about this mission, he said, they are going to be so stubborn, they're not going to want to listen to you. He says it's going to be like you're sitting on scorpions, is the way he describes the ministry that he's given to Ezekiel. And so Ezekiel was the son of Adam, the Son of Man that God anointed to be both a priest and a prophet, a minister and a messenger to a people in captivity. He was to prepare them for the coming destruction of the old Jerusalem, but also a big part of the book of Ezekiel is to show them a new temple that God is going to build, a new and better Jerusalem that would be filled with the glory of God, because the glory of God would depart from the old Jerusalem. In this passage, Ezekiel is the Son of Man, the son of Adam, who prophesies over this valley of dried bones. And God resurrects those dry bones into an army that will do the bidding of God. Now, when you think of Ezekiel's mission, do you see any picture in that of what Jesus did? I mean, wasn't he God's anointed prophet and priest who came to speak? He was God's messenger and God's minister to people in captivity, and not just the Jewish people in captivity. He's come to rescue all people in captivity, and not captivity to Babylon and not captivity to Rome. He's come to rescue the people that are in captivity to sin, to speak to them the good news. The old Jerusalem is going away. The one that was rebuilt after they came back from captivity, that's not the one that Jesus is coming to build. That Jerusalem in Jesus' day is fading away. It's going to be destroyed in a little while. And God is going to build a new and glorious temple. And God is going to build a new Jerusalem. And Jesus is the harbinger of that. He's the one who's come to bring that good news. He is the son of Adam who's bringing good news for all the sons of Adam about what God is going to do through this son of Adam who's come to be their Redeemer. He's the one that really is going to take all our dry bones, all of our brokenness, all of our death, and breathe life into us again. And so fitting I think that Jewish people, when they heard Jesus speak about himself being the Son of Man, I think that the first dot connection they would have made is that there was somebody else that was called the Son of Man. And Ezekiel would be the place that they would go. Because it like I said, 90 times more than anywhere else, really in the whole Bible, Ezekiel talks about a prophet in that way. And so there would be a connection. Oh, he's talking about himself the way that God talked about Ezekiel. And so, but then the more as a follower of Jesus that you appreciate what the ministry and the message of Ezekiel was, the more that you could see that here's the one who is bringing to pass all of those beautiful pictures that God showed to Ezekiel about a new Jerusalem and about a new temple and about a better priesthood and all those wonderful things that were part of that book that talked about spirit and life coming and resurrecting the dry bones of a people living in captivity. And so I think that Ezekiel is one of the places that Jesus' followers would have connected to what he was saying to them when he called himself the Son of Man. Go to Psalm 8. Psalm 8. And there really aren't, outside of Ezekiel, there aren't a lot of places to go. But there are a couple of passages in the Psalms, particularly in a couple of Psalms that were written by David, where David uses the expression Son of Man. And when we come to this passage, you're going to recognize it. This is a Psalm of David, where David is, you can imagine him, walking outside on a beautiful night, and where there's no light pollution, and where you're out in the country, and you're just under a black canopy, dotted with all of the wonderful lights that God has created. And you're just in awe and wonder about, the more I look up at this black sky, it seems like the further I can see. And you see more and more and more stars, and you look at a tiny, tiny dot, and there's 100 just right there. And you think about how vast this world is, and the beauty and the splendor. And David was a man that liked to live in nature. I mean, he was a shepherd. He spent lots of time out nights, watching the sheep, looking up at the sky and thinking about how great and how big our God is. And then in comparison to that, how small, how tiny we are, how insignificant. What is man? Who's the Son of Man? Who are the sons of Adam that God would think about us? And that's what he says, when I consider, verse 3, thy heavens, the work of thy fingers, the moon and the stars which thou hast ordained. What is man? That thou dost take thought of him. Why does God think about me? And the Son of Man, that thou dost care for him. Yet thou hast made him a little lower than God, it says in the New American Standard. That expression there is Elohim. And so in the New King James, it says the angels. It made him a little lower than the angels. I think the ESV says a little lower than the heavenly beings. And so there is, it can be translated either way, to speak of God or to speak of the angelic beings who are heavenly. Yet thou hast made him a little lower than the angels. That's the way it's quoted in the book of Hebrews. And dost crown him with glory and majesty, and thou dost make him to rule over the works of thy hands. Thou hast put all things under his feet. And he goes on to talk about the animals and how God has given man a position of authority over the earth. Do you see that he's hearkening back to what God said in the beginning when he made Adam, the first Adam? And when he gave man dominion over all the earth in paradise, he told him to be fruitful and to multiply, to fill the earth and subdue it. And the naming of the creatures was an exercise of that authority. God gave names to things in Genesis chapters 1 and 2, and Adam gave names to things. All language was a collaborative effort between God and man, and which says what language is about. It's the basics of how we commune with God is this language that God and man created together. And so God wants a relationship with man, and He's given him a shared dominion over all the earth. And David is thinking about that. Like, look at this world, and God has given us a special position over it. And David could appreciate that. I expect that when he writes this, he's writing it as king. And he, as a son of man, can think back to his shepherding days. And he is not arrogant. There were some times in his life where his pride got the better of him, but he is not. He's at his best when he writes this psalm. And he is thinking about the role that God has given him and how accountable he is for exercising his reign in a godly and in a proper way. And he is overwhelmed, humbled by the fact that God has given him this blessed role, this stewardship of this wonderful creation, when he is so small and insignificant, and how could he even do it without God in his life? And so he's overwhelmed with that role, with the Son of Man, that God would care for him in that way. Now, I just want you to think about this with what David says here. There is a sense in which when you read this, it's true. Even now, we have dominion over the earth. Mankind rules over this creation. But there's a sense in which that's not absolutely true. We eventually, our sphere of influence is limited, our resources are limited. We all live for a little while, and then we die. And so there is, because of sin, this rule has been messed up. This role that God had in mind for man to fill the earth and subdue it was abdicated when we decided to be sinners. And so now it's a broken world. It's not all that God intended to be. Now, this world that we rule over, it grows thorns and thistles for us. By the sweat of our brow, we make bread. And so it's toil and labor, and there's suffering that's a part of this role that God has given us in this world. And so what David says here is true in a metaphorical sense, in a symbolic sense, but it's not true in an absolute sense. Go to the book of Hebrews chapter 2, and I want you to see the way that the writer here looks back at this passage and tells us the way that we ought to read it from a New Testament context. When we understand who Jesus is and what He came to do, then we can look back at Psalm 8 and appreciate the Son of Man, us as being sons of Adam or Son of Man, and Jesus as Son of Man in a new way. So he says in chapter 2 in verse 5 of Hebrews, He did not subject, speaking of God, He did not subject to angels the world to come, concerning which we're speaking. So he says God doesn't have a redemption plan in mind for angels. There's not some kind of role that they're going to be given in this redemptive purpose that God has in the future for man. He says, verse 6, but one has testified somewhere saying, and this is Psalm 8 that he quotes, what is man that thou rememberest him, or the Son of Man that thou art concerned about him? Thou hast made him for a little while lower than the angels. Thou hast crowned him with glory and honor, and hast appointed him over the works of thy hands. Thou hast put all things in subjection under his feet. Then he makes an observation about this. For in subjecting all things to him, to the Son of Man, he left nothing that is not subject to him. So he's saying, if you read Psalm 8 in its absolute sense, it's saying that God has put everything under man's feet. But the writer is saying here, when I look at our world, I don't see everything under man's feet. I mean, it looks like man is more of a victim in our world than a victor over our world. It looks like the world is more in control of man than man in control of the world. And so that doesn't look like it's true in an absolute, and he's right. It's not true in an absolute sense. And then he says, but now, I didn't finish the thought there. In subjecting all things to him, he left nothing that is not subject to him. Then what he says next, but now we do not yet see all things subjected to him. He's saying, when I look at our world, I don't see everything subjected to man. So what is Psalm 8 talking about? Well, then he tells us, verse 9, how we're to read the psalm. He says, but we do see him, capital H, him. We do see him who has been made for a little while lower than the angels. What son of man, out of all the sons of man, what son of Adam, out of all the sons of Adam, was made for a little while lower than the angels? He says, Jesus, because of the suffering of death, crowned with glory and honor, that by the grace of God, he might taste death for everyone. There is one man for whom that was a son of Adam, that was made to rule over everything. All things were put in subjection under his feet. But look at what that did for the rest of the sons of Adam. He says, because of the suffering of death, crowned with glory and honor, that by the grace of God he might taste death for everyone. Verse 10, for it was fitting for him, for whom are all things and through whom are all things, in bringing many sons to glory, to perfect the author of their salvation through sufferings. For both he who sanctifies and those who are sanctified are all from one Father, for which reason he's not ashamed to call them brethren. Do you see what he's saying here? We have a brother. We know somebody. We have a kinsman. We do have somebody in the family of Adam who did subdue the earth. All things were put under his feet. And guess what? He shared it with all of his brothers. He, by the suffering of death and being crowned with glory and honor, has brought all these sons who were harvesting thorns and thistles, who were sinners, who were condemned to die. He's brought many sons to glory so that we're able to share in this dominion over all the earth that is coming with his eternal reign. And so, Psalm 8 can be spoken in an absolute sense, especially about Jesus, but also about what Jesus did for all the sons of Adam, all the sons of men who have been brought who become children of God because of the redemption that he's brought for us. Now, go back and think about Psalm 8 now. It's not just that we stand in awe when we look up at the sky and we are in wonder about what God has done in this creation of giving us a position of an important role of being stewards of this world, or him thinking about us. But what is man that he's mindful of us, that he would send this man to rescue us after we gave up this role that God had in mind for us. We surrendered paradise. We gave it over to the devil. We don't deserve that. And yet, what is man that God is mindful of us? That he would send such a Redeemer, that he would send the Son of Man to rescue us so that we might have this position of glory and honor that he is bringing us to in a little while. That whole idea even connects with what we talked about in Ezekiel with the new creation, with the new Jerusalem. With all of the valley of dry bones. It's all interrelated. One more passage I want to take us to. Go to Daniel chapter 7. And this is the passage that resulted in Jesus being condemned to die. Because people appreciated when he talked about, I do think that there would have been the connection between, maybe not in Jesus' lifetime, maybe after his death, there would have been the connection to Psalm 8 and the things that David said there about like the writer of Hebrews does. But in Daniel chapter 7, this is the passage that the Sanhedrin connected to Jesus' claims there when he was being tried. So in Daniel 7, Daniel was one of the captives as well, and this is during the reign of Belshazzar that one of the Babylonian kings, that Daniel has this vision. And there's a couple of visions in Daniel that are the same, where he sees, God gives him kind of a calendar of events that are going to happen over the next 500 years, and what's going to happen like one thing after another leading up to the establishment of the eternal kingdom of God. And so in this vision, Daniel sees these 4 beasts, and each successive beast is worse than the first. The first beast is this lion, half eagle. It's an eagle with wings, but then God gives it legs, and it stands up like a man, and gives it the mind of a man, and so it's like a domesticated. The wings are plucked off, so it's a domesticated lion, eagle lion that he pictures. It's a picture of Babylon. Then the second beast is this beast that is that's a bear that's like eating dinner. It's got 3 ribs in its mouth, and so it's not even finished ravenously tearing something apart, and that's a picture of Persia. And then the third beast that he sees is a beast that is it's a 4-headed, 4-winged leopard, and it's a picture of Alexander the Great and his swift conquest of the world, with the coming of the Greek Empire. And then the fourth beast is the most terrifying of all. It's this Frankenstein beast. It's got iron teeth. It's not even described. It's not likened to any animal at all. It's got iron teeth, and it's got feet that trample everything around it. It's called dreadful and terrifying. Daniel runs out of words to describe how terrible this beast is. And it has 10 horns, and there's another horn that pops up, and it uproots some other horns. And the horn that pops up has human eyes, and it has a mouth, a filthy mouth. It boasts blasphemous things, and it hurts God's people. And then in contrast to these beasts, there is the Ancient of Days sets up his court. It's a picture of God. And there is judgment that is rendered against these 4 beasts. And the Ancient of Days, as he's sitting in glory, is approached by this person, this being, who comes riding on the clouds. And guess how he's described? Look at verse 13 of Daniel chapter 7. I kept looking in the night visions, and behold, with the clouds of heaven, one like a son of man was coming. And he came up to the Ancient of Days and was presented before him. And to him was given dominion, glory, and a kingdom, that all peoples, nations, and men of every language might serve him. We see why he's called Son of Adam. Here's someone that's kin. Here's someone that's a champion of all the people. That all peoples, nations, and men of every language might serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion which will not pass away, and his kingdom is one which will not be destroyed. Now, I think the thing that we're intended to be taken aback by is, who is this man? Who is this man? Who is the man that can stand boldly before the throne of the mighty God? There is no man in the Old Testament who ever stood in the presence of God and stayed on his feet. There's no man that ever approached God riding on a cloud. There's no man that ever came before God in this fashion. Who is this man? Who could he be? Who is this mystery man? And I want us to appreciate that here are all these beasts who are their fangs and teeth, and they're trampling things, and they got wings, and they look like eagles and lions. And here is just this man. And he is mightier than all the beasts that hell can throw at him. He is more awesome. He is more mighty. He has no fear. And even this terrifying beast with the 10 horns that tramples the saints of God and is going to persecute them, he is He is going to be victorious over this filthy-mouthed 11-horned beast who speaks such blasphemous things against God. But he's just a man. Who is this man? I think that that's especially what Jesus was trying to get his generation, what he's trying to get us to think about. Who is this? Who is this man who has brought such blessing and such power and such wonder and such might? Who is this man? And the thing that's left out of this context, the mystery, the thing that's left open here about this Son of Man are the blanks that get filled in by the Gospels. Because what we don't read about here is that this man has nowhere to lay his head. Though the creation that he will rule over, the foxes have holes and the birds have nests, but he's got nowhere to put his head. This man is going to be a friend to sinners. This man who can forgive sins is going to be killed by sinners. This man is going to be betrayed by one of his own. This man who approaches the throne of God, we're not told here how he approaches the throne of God, but we know how he comes to the throne of God. He comes with his own blood before the throne of God to make as a priest, as the messenger. He comes before the throne of God with his blood that he presents for our cleansing, for our redemption. He doesn't come before the throne of God with empty hands. He comes to minister on our behalf, to give himself as the Lamb of God who would take away the sins of the world. That's how this man comes. He is so appropriately humble because there's never been a humbler man. There's never been a man who was more of a man than this man, this Son of Man who's come to be our Redeemer. Just 4 things I want to say to you before we close. Number 1, Jesus is the man. He is the man. You think you're a man? You want to know what a man looks like? You look at Jesus. He shows us what real manhood is, what it really means. And I don't mean that just in a masculine sense. I mean to be a human being. He shows us what that looks like. He is not just the man. He is our man. He's a son of Adam. We're kin to him. He claimed us. That's part of what he means by that expression. He is for us. He came to oppose all these beasts so that he could be our Redeemer. And I have been in awe of this thought recently, that the mightiest deeds that Jesus did, he did as a man. Can you appreciate that? I think I've said this to you before. Jesus could do no miracle that would redeem us. There was nothing he could do as a mighty deed of God to rescue us from our sins. The only thing that he could do for you and me to save us from our sins was to die as a man. But he has to die as a sinless man. So his humanity and his being a man, being God who gives up everything to be a man for us, the man that would die for us, is the only way that we go from here to eternity. And I'm just so in awe that how powerful it was for Jesus and how amazing it was that his obedience to God is a thing that rescued us. Which then brings me to my final thought. Our finest hour as sons of men, the sons of man, and our greatest achievements are when we simply like Jesus, when we simply obey God. I wish that sounds. I'm afraid that sounds so like not convicting or not. I hope it is persuasive. The biggest thing that you do in your life every day is when you say, I'm going to listen to God here. That is so powerful. Satan can't do anything against that. When you decide that Jesus is going to be Lord and that you're going to obey Him, there is no weapon that can be brought against that. It is so powerful when we do that. And the mightiness of that is demonstrated in the life of Jesus. It's His simple obedience to God that is the thing that rescued us. And His grace in that way is designed to constrain us to want to surrender our will to God in the same way. And so let's follow our man, shall we? Let's follow our man. God's man, the Son of Man, who did not come to be served, but to serve and to give His life a ransom for you and me. Behold the man upon the cross, my sin upon His shoulders. Ashamed I hear my mocking voice cry out among the scoffers. It was my sin that held Him there until it was accomplished. His dying breath has brought me life. I know it is finished. If you're not a follower of Jesus, would you come tonight? Would you come and surrender to Him, make Him your Lord, your Christ? As together we stand as we sing.